I just want to preface this by saying I have absolutely not regretted my time at all. I've cherished this last year, even in a small town.
Austria is a country known for its beauty and culture, from Vorarlberg in the west to Burgenland in the east. Yet for a variety of reasons, applicants to the US Teaching Assistantship Program in Austria typically request placements in cities such as Vienna, Salzburg, Linz, Graz, Innsbruck, and Klagenfurt. But with only so many placements available in those cities, the majority of USTAs are placed outside of the main urban centers. One such USTA not placed in the larger cities was Kaj Johnson, who spent the 2023-24 program year living and teaching in Waidhofen on the Ybbs in Lower Austria. At the end of the program year, we took the train from Vienna to Waidhofen on the Ybbs to talk to Kai about his experience as a queer man living in small-town Austria.
The advantages of living in small-town Austria, I think, can be sort of, appreciated no matter if you're queer or not. I think just being able to walk into town and see the same people over and over again, having this close-knit sense of community when I'm going to the farmer's market, when I'm getting groceries, this kind of thing, I really appreciate the tight-knit aspect of Waidhofen. And I certainly haven't felt excluded from that because of my identity. I still feel like I reap the benefits of living in, a town of 11,000 and enjoying just how close everyone is. I really appreciate that. The disadvantages, I think, come when it comes to, looking for representation or looking for community as a queer man in Waidhofen. There's next to no queer representation just on a day-to-day basis. And I think having grown up in Minneapolis and living in New York City for a year, I came to sort of take that for granted. And it didn't realize until living in Waidhofen that that's not a universality everywhere, that there are places where you don't see anyone that looks like you or that might, be like you. And I found that the most difficult part, sort of the day-to-day of feeling a little bit singular in my experience. Even though I had loved every other aspect of the small town atmosphere, the representation was really missing. I mean, I think there's no one correct way of dealing with incidents of homophobia in the classroom. My incidents have really mostly been students saying things in a way that was offensive, not in a way that was, genuine or asking something about you, but really sort of a means of shaming someone for their sexuality. And when it first happened, I think I wasn't fully aware. It's also difficult navigating these sort of instances of homophobia in a foreign language. So that was one thing that took me a bit by surprise. Once it happened the third or fourth time, then I made the decision to talk to teachers and say, hey, pull them aside after class and saying, this is what I've been noticing. I don't know if you've been noticing this as well, but making them aware of the issue was kind of the way I dealt with it. After that happened, my teachers were all super accommodating. They said, that's completely unacceptable. And if it continues to happen, we will just pull you out of that class and pull you into a class that would be more appreciative of, the work you're doing as a USTA. So I thought that was a really good approach. But again, I don't think there's one right way to do it. We as teaching assistants are not often, doing disciplinary action at all. So it's really on the teacher to sort of enforce those rules. But I thought it'd be important to make them aware of what's going on. I think I incorporate it when I feel it's appropriate and when I think it's sort of relevant to incorporate. Certainly there are some lessons, as USTAs, we teach just such a wide range of materials in the classroom. So things like American sports, American vehicles, cars, travel in America versus travel in Europe. So some of these things I'm just pulling from a general perspective of being an American, of being born and raised in the United States. And I don't always find it relevant to incorporate queerness in those lessons. However, when it comes to talking about issues like affirmative action, critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, other civil rights movements, and hot button issues in the US, I find it sort of mandatory to mention queerness or to mention queer or trans activists who are part of those struggles. So I certainly don't shy away from it, talking about it and mentioning the words queer or trans to students in the classroom. I think having grown up in cities, being born and raised in major urban centers, I sort of took for granted how easy it can be to get the appointments, the medication, the doctors that you need. And moving to Waidhofen was a bit of a reality check of not only advocating for yourself in a new place, but also advocating for yourself in a new language was quite difficult. I think of one instance in particular when I was looking for pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, which is a medication that HIV negative people can take to remain HIV negative. And it's really focused on queer people. And when I asked for this medication, I was met with a lot of kind of skepticism and questions about, why do you need this medication? Are you already HIV positive? Are you doing drugs? What's the reason? So that was already a bit uncomfortable at the beginning. Then when it came to, figuring out why I needed and how I would get it, I was told that it would require a private prescription and would be hundreds of euros a month because it's a preventative medication, not one that's directly targeting already, a pre-existing issue. So that was a bit of a reality check because I never ran into any issues in the US. Seeking this medication, all of the healthcare professionals I had talked with about it, knew what it was. And here I was explaining in my, far from perfect German, what this was and why I needed it. So I think just being an advocate for yourself can be difficult in a new country when, you haven't had to do that before. I think spending time in each country, I've realized that none of the countries are a monolith. There's lots of different queer experiences to be had in each country, and it really depends on where you're living in each country, what kind of experience you'll get as a queer individual. I found my time in Vienna, in Austria, in Linz, in Austria. I've seen lots of other queer people and made friends in those spaces, I think, a lot easier than I have in small town Austria, where I can relate to people maybe a little bit less. My time in Germany has really been in Berlin, which is just a center for queer culture, for queer international culture, for queer music and art making. So I've really, I think, taken advantage of that queer community during my time in Berlin. In New York and Minneapolis, I would say the same thing. They are both kind of centers for queer culture, queer activism. I really appreciated my time there, and I think there's a difference to be had between sort of the urban center and the smaller town in any country you go to, whether it's Austria, the United States, or Germany. In Waidhofen, like I've mentioned, there have been some issues in the classroom with homophobia related to healthcare, and I think they weren't issues I'd had or would have experienced in Berlin or in New York City. So I think that sort of colors the experience as a USTA. I think it might sound obvious, but my students have really made this such an incredible experience, an incredible year in Austria. I've really enjoyed seeing the progression of my students from the beginning of the year to the end, and how their English has improved, because it really has. I've just really, really enjoyed bringing a variety of topics into the classroom and seeing how they'll be received, what ideas my students have, what debates they can have in class. I've really been impressed, not only from the level of English proficiency in Austria, but also just from their personalities and their characters. I really have found that so rewarding. Additionally, the teachers have been awesome. I found the teachers really, really supportive of me, not only as a teacher and my success as a teacher, but also as someone living in Austria for the first time. So if I had to, say it in short, just the people here have made it such a phenomenal and memorable year. Yeah, I just want to preface this by saying I have absolutely not regretted my time at all. I've cherished this last year, even in a small town. I had initially requested in the USTA application a larger city, like a university town or Vienna, but I truly have relished this experience. So I encourage people to apply. And I think just being open with what you'll receive. Many people apply and just want to live in Vienna and that's it. And I think it's important to keep an open mind and realize just how valuable a year in a smaller town like Waidhofen can be. Even with the issues of, having to be more of an advocate for yourself, or maybe not seeing the representation that you're used to or that you would like to see on a day-to-day basis, I still think it's completely possible to find community, to establish roots in a place, and I'll forever cherish and miss my time in Waidhofen, even with the trials that I faced. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone, especially queer applicants, to apply. if you are interested in education, interested in cultural immersion like I was, I've just completely enjoyed my time here.